It's campaign and conquest. Let's play TT RPGs done right. War games and gaming with Storm and Magenta tonight. We got a new system best you'll ever see. A paracosmic convergence of distance masterpiece. It's got the hit shots and plays every genre so well that you would think it was crafted in the depths of hell. It's campaigns and conquests, the best that there is. War games and gaming with a system that wins. Whether you're a pro or a fighting kid, we've got something better, it's really the shit. Custom worlds, random tables galore, got all the backgrounds and so much more. It's campaigns and conquests, the only true way. War games and gaming, all night and all day. It's campaigns and conquests, better subscribe to the show. War games and gaming, and now you know. It's campaigns and conquests, and we're feeling alright. War games and gaming, we're Storm and Magenta tonight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Campaigns and Conquests. My name's Magenta. I'm your co-host, and joining me tonight, as always, is our host, Storm. Say hi, Storm.
Hello, how's it going, folks?
I hope everyone out there is doing well. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight's topic is going to be do-it-yourself RPG. What is it, and how do you do it? So there could be more than one answer to that one, obviously. And we would love to hear from anyone who's listening with what your preferences are. If you've ever done your own RPG that you've run, what, things you found helpful, and all of those details would be awesome to share. So if you're interested in sharing your perspective, just put a request in the comments. We'll see it. We'll invite you up, and we look forward to hearing from you. You can choose to, talk on voice or with video as well. It is entirely up to you. So, Storm, what is do-it-yourself RPG from your perspective?
Well, I look at that as custom. Sorry, this thing. I get this thing. Doing your own worlds, doing your own dungeon crawls, hex crawls, things like that. Pretty much anything outside of prepackaged retail campaigns or one-off modules would be, in my definition, do it yourself. Thing is that like every term, and there's way too many terms in gaming, in my opinion, as we've all heard before, is that it's got a different definition for a lot of different people. It's very, very vague, so it may not have the same definition for somebody else. And so we're just talking about, cracking a can, it's Miller time. And
it is actually double shot energy time.
Wish I had one of those. But anyway, yeah, thumbs up. You might think of it as crafting your own dungeon terrain or something of that nature, or maybe coming up with your own rules. So we'll just take a look at the different angles on it, and hopefully hear from people who have their own perspective on it as well.
Yeah, I would love to hear anyone's point of view on that. I think, played some do-it-yourself RPGs, and I like them just fine. I think it's a great way to kind of express individuality. And for games that don't really fit into the, hard and fast rules of other genre types, it's a great way to play where you can really let your creativity flourish and have different settings and different kinds of things, so that's always nice.
Mhm.
How does one find a do-it-yourself RPG, or if you are a host or a dungeon master, game master, how do you find players for your own RPG system?
Well, boy, these days finding players at all is a real difficult thing. But as far as finding DIY or do it yourself, it all depends on your definition of it. Uh, some definitions that I've seen are even, your own, not a whole rule system, just mechanics, which some people call house rules, some people call variant, some people call homebrew. There's all these different phrases that have just minor differences between the definition. I've seen people actually argue past one another, arguing the same thing, not realizing it because they're using two different phrases that have almost the same definition. So if you want to find somebody's setting, um, the internet would be the way to go. Social media, I suspect. Same with mechanics. Whatever's for sale or for distribution out there. Lord knows there's enough what they call retro clones that have people's own little variants of mechanics on it. Um, Things of that nature. So the internet is the one-stop shop for everything, including this.
Right.
Excuse me.
Well, and also we did have a guest on just last week who actually made his own do-it-yourself Tiny D10. Aaron joined us last week. If anyone missed that episode and you want to see what he had to say about his gaming system, feel free to go back into the archives there on YouTube and rewatch that show. It was a very good show, and he made his because he was looking to develop something for his kids to play, something that was a good introductory type game for younger players, which is an awesome goal to have. I think for all of us who enjoy gaming, keeping the next generation interested and involved is a very good goal to keep the games going. And that way we have a chance to pop in on the new kids when they start playing their games and go, back in my day. Yeah,
Yep,
we
it's true.
and paper. No, you had to drive to someone's house and everything, but
Yep, yep, yep.
different
That's me.
world these days. But
Hmm. Yep. So yeah,
so, oh, go ahead, hon.
okay. I know. I was going to say that is the great example where he just ground up everything from beginning to end, a brand new system. And I don't know if he came up with well, he's using creative ways of doing different genres. I think they had some deal with goblins and gangsters, and so a couple of other settings. There was
Ape Island, he mentioned.
Ape Island. That's right. That was the
Yeah.
big one, and then branching out with some book publishers to make something about drug cartels, if I remember correctly. I just saw that he had after the show he put out that module that was
Oh,
kind of
very
a cart,
cool.
yeah, fighting drug cartels down and that sort of thing. Kind of a people saw the movie by Tom Clancy, Clear and Present Danger, I think was the one that was about fighting drug cartels, stuff like that. So just go in different directions with it. That's the first thing uh, I think of personally is world building.
Right.
But
What do you think makes the difference between a good world build and one that needs work?
well, it's kind of I've kind of evolved over the years on that. And what I kind of jump around. I'm interested in something for a while, so I kind of spent a lot of time reading about it, getting interested about it, talking about it as it's the greatest thing. I think a lot of people do this. Oh, this is the best way to do it and all that. And you play it for a while, and then you go find something else, and maybe you change your mind. But I like a world that turns, and what I mean by world that turns is that it's not just some paper backdrop where people that are playing run into some encounter, and that encounter runs uh, only when you walk into it. And when I say encounter, here's another thing with phraseology. Encounter usually means a battle in RPG. What I mean is just encountering other things, NPCs, people, like walking through town. You know, I've used the analogy before. It's a proper analogy. It gets the point across. Lord of the Rings or other MMOs. You go into Bree and Lord of the Rings, everybody's in the same spot doing the same thing every time you go there. You know, and for an MMO that may make sense. You know where to go to get your stuff done. This dude does that. This chick does this. Whatever it is, sell stuff, trade stuff, upgrade stuff, gives you an adventure, whatever it is. But they're standing still, and they look like a kiosk. It's like adventuring with Chuck E. Cheese. They're just animatronic that barely move at all, and they all say the same thing. I want that city to bustle. I want people, and yeah, there's people walking around. There's, you know, you get a vibe. There's the town guard and all that, but not everybody. I want a world where everybody's doing something all the time. And people go, well, that's too complicated. You could never get it done. There are ways to do it where you don't have to physically track the movement of every particular person every second of the day and still have a turning world, because that world turning becomes an engine that spits out things that you can use to game and adventure and create scenarios. That's why I like it.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of like free play. I don't know anybody who's ever watched the and I wish I could remember the name of the movie, but it was the one with Ryan Reynolds, the blue shirt guy. Did you ever see that?
I did see that movie, and I also am old enough to be one of those. What the hell was the name of that again? Who was that
Right.
guy?
Yeah, I know, right? I
name.
can't remember what it was called now. I just always think of it as the blue shirt guy. But anyway, it's kind of where he's always on the same loop. He always gets up. He always goes and gets the same coffee. He always goes to the bank. He does the same thing over and over again until the underlying code that the other person wrote kicks in, and he starts actually living a life, making his own choices, doing things that are different, breaking out of the script, that kind of thing. So I kind of wonder eventually if that isn't where everything is going to go with AI, that you're going to have NPCs that are actually they're actually players in their own sense of their, you know, they have their own personality or their own motivations, and they're actually playing with you in cooperation or against you in competition, or just side by side, something like that. You know, it's a possibility now with AI. The resources it would take to really pull that off are a little beyond our reach right now. But it won't take long.
Right. And that's, you'll hear, if you've heard it, or if you're out there listening and you've heard it, the word Braunstein.
I have heard that term.
Oof. I don't want to get into that because it's this whole thing. But one of the things that they're kind of referencing is the idea of having what they call patron play. And that's where, okay, let's take it. Let me give an example. You're Darth Vader. Why the hell not? Darth Vader. If you're playing West End games or FFG or whatever variant of Star Wars you want to play, and for some reason Darth Vader is part of the thing, he's going to be an NPC likely, right? And so patron play is like, hey, I called up Bob. Going with Bob, why not? Because I'm original, and Bob can't play all the time, but Bob's going to show up for the part where Darth Vader comes around, and Bob's going to play Darth Vader. He's going to play Darth Vader as Darth Vader. He's going to play from Darth Vader's perspective. He's going to try to achieve the goals that you want Darth Vader to try to achieve in the game. So that's kind of a patron play where you get another person to be the adversary or something, as opposed to having the DM run everybody. It makes things more interesting. It's just like a computer game. I hear a lot of people say, well, I like playing a computer game. It's fun, but the AI stops to be challenging. Once you've conquered the AI, then you know how it plays, and we've talked about that before, like Empire
Right.
Earth.
Yeah.
And
Especially
how,
the Ottoman Empire, because if you beat them once, they just never come back. They stop building. They wimp out
right,
completely
what's
after
going to
that.
happen. Right. So
Yeah.
that game's fun, but it's fun, a lot funner when you're playing against another person.
Right.
Because you have that, and that's the idea behind patron play, or what we're talking about, or what you're talking about with the AI and all that. But that's why I say, when people get into, you can only handle 5 or 6. Why don't I want more? I want a gymnasium full of people there. Now, yes, there is a point where you might want to get some help or something like that. Well, this goes off another tangent, but it is kind of a DIY type of thing, do it yourself type of thing. I like the idea of a living campaign. And if you're going to have a living campaign, you can't get enough warm bodies through the door to play it. And the reason I like that is because it generates all that stuff without a lot of expense. There's nothing more dynamic and interesting than interacting with other human beings, as opposed to any machine, no matter how sophisticated that machine may be or become. And it's a little bit of a kumbaya. Instead of everybody doing their own little thing in their own little corner and sniping and bickering at each other, or complaining that that's not the right way, or this is the wrong way, or whatever. Now you got everybody doing everything all in the same place.
Honey, I got to break it to you. If you're involving people, there will be bickering. There will be rage. There will be. I'm sorry. We are just wired like that, I think, unfortunately.
I think you'll see that if you get people all in the same system, all in the same world, playing at the same time, you'll take a lot of that out. I think you will.
But will people like it as much?
Well, here's the thing. One of the things that after the show, but talking with Aaron and something, he said something on Twitter like, I don't know that you can satisfy most people most of the time, let alone some people all the time. And I think you're right. There's people, like you say, tend to be more negative than positive, whether they say they are or not, or where they want to be or not. It ends up being that way. So will you get everybody to like everything? Hell no. Am I going to get everybody to play this game? No, but it's still cool.
I'm gonna nerd out on everyone for a moment, so please forgive me. But human behavior is one of my particular interest topics, so I'm gonna nerd out on that for just a bit. But yeah, it's a survival feature. It's a feature, not a bug. We are prone to look at what is dangerous, what is consequential, what we don't like, what we fear, what we are afraid of the most, is what was going to draw our attention the fastest. Because, if you're so busy looking at the beautiful flowers that you don't notice the tiger that's about to bite your head off, well, you don't make it to the next generation and you don't have kids. So we are wired to look for the tiger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Even if the daisies are pretty too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we got anybody? That's good. That's good. So that's one part of it is world building. Is just a living world with different factions, different conflicts. Hopefully more people than NPCs. But if you gotta NPCs, different subplots to follow, things like that.
Mm-hmm. It almost sounds like worlds like this and gameplay like this, that it could end up writing its own story. Like these could become kind of like a little in progress. It's like living a novel, storytelling
exactly.
type of thing.
That's exactly the point of the thing. And I, we were just joking about old people and in my day, but I'm going to tell you again, when everybody says, well, that sort of thing is impractical and can't be done, it was done with snail mail and 6 people across the country for about I think 2 years.
That's domain name games that you've talked about in the past, right?
Yeah.
Like domain play.
Well, this was called a living campaign, and it had all of that.
Oh, okay.
And it was coordinated among with like half a dozen people as that was running the thing. They did it predominantly through, there were some phone calls and stuff like that, but most of it was done through publications in a magazine where you interact through the snail mail, and then the occasional convention where people would meet up and play. But they did that for, I think, a couple of years, and they called it a living campaign. And I think it is the epitome of RPG experience, because, like you say, it is the closest thing to a running novel. When you watch a good TV show, it's like when it ends, you go, man, I want more. I want to go back to that world where I was hanging out with Coach and and Norm, whatever. This is the only characters that come.
Oh, I immediately went to Buffy, and the very last episode of Buffy, when Sunnydale was. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but what happened. So, but I remember thinking, "Oh man, I want more.
Right.
When's the spinoff coming?"
Right, and to be able to just get yourself inside, I think that's why RPGs on computer become very popular, because you're immersed in this world and everything's going on to some degree around you, and it's all this stuff, but you're still largely singular. And you have limits on finance, on, memory space, computer capability, all that jazz. Whereas if you're doing a DIY, do it yourself, or a living campaign type of thing, your only limit is your own imagination and your own willingness to participate. And you can keep coming back to the same story. It's not the same story that you're rereading. A lot of people say, I read Lord of the Rings once a year. Okay, great. That's fine. I got no problem with that. I'm not putting you down, but that's no matter what, it's beginning, middle, end, all the same. If you play a living campaign, it's like a novel, but the novel's ever evolving, ever changing. Like you say, it's creating its own stories for you to follow and to participate in.
Right.
And that's why. Now, here's the other thing. I don't want to get too critical of people, but I do puzzle at some of the contradictions. You'll hear people talk about, well, this is a game of imagination and all that. Okay. Then why aren't you imagining your own stuff up? Why is imagination always spoken of? Then, well, I need the art on the front cover to spark my imagination. Well, what? You don't have any? You need to shock it with high resolution pictures, like on a video game. I'm all about my own thing. The same thing with making up your own world. Why do you want to buy somebody else's story if it's all about telling your own story? You hear this all the time. It's about collaborative storytelling. Okay, well then tell your own story in your own world. Why aren't you doing your own thing? So what I've got over 60 worlds. Now I've made them the way I like them, but you can have them, or at least the beginnings of them, where you can roll up. This is my idea of do it yourself. There's a template. There's some basics, like we've talked about when we do our world building. You've got your government. You've got your religion, your culture, your economy, your military, some NPCs, good and bad, that sort of thing. That should be enough to spark imagination. The rest you should be able to do yourself. And you roll it all up. You don't even have to think it up. It's there. You just randomly there's just a puzzle that fits together in different ways for every different person, because you're rolling dice to come up with it.
Right.
That's my idea. And that's what I've got to show people. Excuse me.
And each player that comes to the table brings their own perspective and their own unique element to it. That's going to make it a different story every time. So even if you did use the same essential world that you start off with, that a new group of people involved in it are going to choose to go in different places, run into different things. They'll have different motivations and end goals.
Right. That, like the one that we're going to start doing. I understand that we've said a couple of times that we're going to do this, and then things have gotten in the way. But we're going to do the Star Wars thing because I live and breathe Star Wars. I love it like no other. And when we had it before, and we had more than the 3 or 5 people that everybody thinks is some unbreakable ceiling of maximum players, we had more like 15. We had some that were playing from the Imperial perspective, some were playing from the Rebel perspective, some were playing from a neutral third party perspective, and it was incredible. What a fun way to do it.
I'd love to do that here on the show and start that. So it would be kind of a mini series. Yeah, we'll do some shorts and do some scenarios. What I think, and we've kind of talked about this behind the scenes, but guys, so we're giving you a little behind the scenes peek at how we do things for the show and stuff. But we've talked about doing this where I already have a character that I'm playing in this domain play for the Star Wars. And then anyone who wants to join in, we're going to be, posing the questions, the things that are going to be my part in the game. I'll get asked, and then we'll put it out as a short, and it'll be, you can find it on the channel for Campaigns and Conquests. If you're subscribed to us, it'll make it easier. You can even turn on the notifications so that you can be notified when it's coming out. And then you get a chance to, comment in the show, or in the comments below, what you would do in that scenario. So we can kind of see, what different options would be out there. And, we'll pick a few to talk about from the comments that are made every week. So we can kind of, play that live with you as an audience, and anyone who wants to take it a step further and play live that way too can certainly request to do that, and we'll see if we can get something going that would be a living campaign like that. I think that would be very, very interesting.
Right. Anyhow, and one thing is, it's very doable. I'm going to try to stop harping on the whole complexity thing, because here's the thing. Some of that is just verbiage being hurled. Right now, as we speak, there are other people on other channels that are playing these games. The very ones that I talk about, some people say are complicated. They're doing living. I know living campaigns aren't extensive, but they're not unheard of. That's being done. I also talk about having a kind of online convention atmosphere. I know those are being planned right now as we speak. So they can be done. It's not a matter of complexity or being overburdensome or anything like that. It's a matter of desire versus lack thereof. And if you don't want to do something, no one's trying to make you do it. But it can be done. It can be fun. All we need is people that are willing to try it and participate with an open mind, as opposed to just saying how everything is whatever, complex or whatever. So, but that's what I'm looking for, is the online experience of a living campaign and a convention. Now, I'm picking Star Wars to start with. I love it. I've written extensively about it. And we'll find people that are interested in it. I know there's several clubs out there that are interested. I've got 2 guys besides Magenta that are going to be playing, and I could use more, as many as I could get. But it'll be fun. Now, there'll be other
merrier, really, because that's
it's literally
each new
that
person brings a new perspective and new wrinkles to the game, because you never know what someone's going to do. And that unpredictable nature of the game is what makes it the most exciting.
Right.
Versus just something where, because I'm always going to think the same way that I think, it could get to a point where I could be considered predictable. Once you've played with me for a while, you would see, okay, she's going to do this. Although if in certain contexts, I know how to be unpredictable too. So I try, but anyway, if you've got like 100 people playing a game, there is bound to be some things that you would just never expect happening.
Right.
And that's what really makes an exciting game, is you just don't know what to expect. And it's like, oh, I would have never thought anybody would do that,
Right. And there's people, here's the thing. More people makes it go faster, not slower. you can have a giant, like I don't know how to even explain the effect, but I played a war game with 1 versus 1, and it took a certain amount of time. Played the same scenario 4 versus 4, took about half the time, because what we did is we split everything up. Now
Right.
you handle this battalion, you handle that battalion. I'll be the overall guy. This, that, and the other thing. Everybody had teams in it. So when it actually makes it's like an old stagecoach. You got one horse that goes. They start stacking up more horses. So you'll see the things progress along real nice. And even if you don't like Star Wars, maybe if you see it as a proof of concept and are interested, I'd like to do that, but I don't like Star Wars. I like Star Trek or fantasy or whatever.
I like both Star Trek
you can-
and Star Wars. I'm
Yeah.
one of those people. You
Sure.
know what I mean.
But there's a lot of people that are all about swords and sorcery. All I'm saying is that there's other worlds and other scenarios, and there's no reason why we can't run more than one, so that people that have different interests get involved, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But yeah, I'd like to do the Star Trek one too. I know she's hot for it because she's more of a Star Trek person, and that's there. I tried to get people to play that. I'd love to have people play that. I see people playing it. I have one individual who expressed interest, one who kind of did and then kind of didn't, and then there's Magenta who'd love to play. Now that scenario,
Oh, yeah. I would always love to play Star Trek, but I can see Star Trek is a little bit harder to create a game because it takes a whole lot more imagination, because there's always some sort of scientific mystery, or it gets a little more complex. Star Wars, to me, I mean, it's set in space, but it's more of a down to earth type of story when you get right down to it. I mean, the technology is there. That's what makes it, futuristic and everything. But when you get right down to it, it has more in common with Dungeons and Dragons than Star Trek does.
I've heard this before, but that's all right.
Oh, you didn't hear it from me though, right?
Heard
You heard it from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, there's a if you changed out the lightsaber with swords and things, and Obi-Wan Kenobi with Merlin, you've got King Arthur all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Orphan kid raised by someone else finds out he has a special destiny. Is gifted a sword by an elder who teaches him the ways of magic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Comes to the rescue and rebuilds an empire that was thought gone and destroyed. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't know. It's just whatever. But
what?
So
I'm sorry, it is.
Anyway,
We're just missing the Lady of the Lake, but that's because Tatooine's a desert.
So
well, actually, Princess Leia could be the Lady of the Lake. She did start the whole thing off.
So there's that. So we've made that push again. So there's.
Are you mocking me right now?
No, I'm just moving on.
Okay.
Want to keep things going.
Okay. I got it.
It seems like we chased one person out, maybe.
But sorry.
I don't know what it is about Star Wars, but it's like antimatter to most people. I always knew people who really enjoyed it, but it seems like every time I bring it up, people just plug their ears and want to walk away. I don't know what it is, but there's certainly other genres to explore, like Star Trek and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, the mechanics can be do it yourself, though that's a little overdone in my opinion. I mean, I think that's funny because I am making my own game. Everybody is. So, but I don't know that needs a whole lot of examination. What do you think?
Well, I mean, the mechanics are really, I think that's a topic that's more kind of like you have to You have to play it out to really understand. It's not something you can just have a discussion about is quite as easily. You kind of like actually playing a demo would be the best way to handle something like that if you were going to talk about mechanics, because seeing it in action is probably the best way to.
Well, I'm not talking about any particular one.
Oh, okay.
Thing, just in general, but yeah, I think I've never seen more over the years. I've seen some reactions to mechanics debates that are pretty outstanding for their vitriol. So
I think everybody has their preferences when it comes to mechanics. Some of it is based on what you played first or what your favorite game was. But really, for me, it seems like when it comes to discussions of mechanics, is consistency is the key. The one thing the mechanics are designed to do is to give you a means for resolving whatever kind of encounters happen. So, I mean, you could do that in any number of ways as long as you're getting a concise resolution that is consistent and feels fair to the players, that they know what's going on and there's no mystery behind it. Then it's doing its job for the most part. Few exceptions. When mechanics have real problems is when, okay, one time the mechanics gives you a result that makes sense and another time it doesn't, and you can't figure out why. And then it becomes a thing where you're scratching your head going, I should have won that and I didn't, and that makes no sense. And that causes people to not like a mechanic, I think. At least for me personally, that's how I feel. Whoops. Sorry.
Drop something.
I'm destroying my desk right now. I don't know why.
Yeah, it tends to get kind of bitter in debate with that sort of stuff. But you can use DIY with mechanics can be a form of DIY. But it's a relative. Everybody's got a different definition. So a couple of people listening, what's your definition? Let's hear from other people. What do you guys got to say out there in the listening world? Anybody? This is where I get left hanging when nobody replies, even though they're listening. But anybody,
a lot, and I don't hold that against anyone. I have done my fair share of YouTube listening where I am doing something else while I'm listening, where I got headphones on and I'm doing other things. So if that's you, no pressure. But if you want to participate, you are certainly welcome to. And we love to hear from our audience. It does, give us something to reply to and kind of a way to gauge where everybody's at, if we're on the right track. So if there's something that you want to share, if anyone out there has played a do-it-yourself game that you really enjoyed, would love to hear what it was that you enjoyed about it. Or if you had a negative experience, I'd love to hear that too. Because I'm sure, with something as experimental as a do-it-yourself type of game, there could be a little bit of both. So feel free to share if you'd like, or either post a comment, request to come up on the mic, or even on the camera, whatever you like.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have a question. This is, and I don't know if there is a clear-cut answer, but just for your opinion on it, how long do you think you should be playing before you attempt to do a do-it-yourself RPG? Like if you were going to create one, how would you recommend having at least a minimum amount of time that you've hosted as a GM or a DM before you attempt to try and create something on your own?
The weird thing is that because there's a malleable definition, when you say create one, what do you
Well, if you want to build your own world, and host your own game that you're running, that you're building your own world for, creating the world, maybe even your own in-house mechanics, whatever. I suppose there's different levels to it. Like you could just create a module for like an existing game system with existing mechanics where you're just creating the, environment, the NPCs, scenarios. But I would expect you'd have to at least be a long time player, or at least maybe someone who's hosted their own as a dungeon master. Is
Uh,
that what you would recommend, or?
well, I got to be more directly specific. I'm not good with.
Oh, I don't really have okay. So say me, for instance, I've just played a little bit. I'm relatively a newbie. You would
No, but
probably
I mean,
not.
what do you want? What are you talking about making? Are you talking about making a rule set or what? Pick one, and then we can go from there. Basically, what I'm saying. Sorry.
No, I wouldn't suggest maybe creating a whole brand new rule set, but say you wanted to do your own game module.
Understand the system that you're working with before you make your own module. You'd be surprised that you think, oh well, hell, it's just a story and all that stuff. What do I really? But if you don't, you got to make sure that you're familiar with the system before you make a module specifically for the system.
And how much time as a
It's up to it's up to you. But when you feel comfortable that you can sit down and run a game in that system without going having to check things in a book or any of that stuff, and you feel
Mhm.
confident enough that you can just run the thing without that kind of need for constant reference or recollection or, oh, that's right, this goes that way, I kind of forgot, or any of that. When you can do it like that, and that's different for different people. I'm not saying anybody's stupid or slow or anything like that. People are just different, just whatever. But when you feel comfortable that you can sit down and not have to glance at that book every 5 or 6 minutes or every time something unique happens in the game you're running, then you can sit down and start making your own modules for it. If it's your own system, you should be able to make modules for it right away, because you should know the system as you've created it.
Well, that makes sense, obviously, your own system. But in order to create your own system, would you recommend having an understanding of other systems first, or, a variety of different systems?
A lot of
So you
people
can,
will. There's a lot of people that get into credentialism on it, and you should. And I sometimes I think all that is just gatekeeping. There's no. I was making up games, play test them with friends, of course, if you're going to present them to people who aren't friends. But there really is, contrary to most people's insistence otherwise, go ahead and do it.
uh-huh.
See what happens.
Yeah. So we have a comment here I want to respond to from Payman Ali. I'm
Sorry
playing
about
a
the belts.
DIY solo game system. It's working well. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So a solo game system, I'm not sure I'm understanding that terminology. Is that like a accepted meaning to that, or is that something?
No, it's just like when at the probability, but I like that. Just think of the end of the red book that you read, the D&D book.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Where they have you go through that little thing.
Yeah.
Everything, like what I've got is generators for everything, and they're meant for a DM to be able to make up multiple things or just use them as world builders. But you could use it as a solo game too. You start with where are you starting, and more places than just the tavern I have in there, and that gives you some reason to be associated with a party that you might be playing with, or even if you're alone, where you start with, and you roll everything up. What's the mission or the storyline? Are you being commissioned by some royalty to do something? Are you on a quest for something? There's all sorts of different possibilities. If you're on a quest for something, what is it? Then you go to the next table, and the table has a bunch of random, magic items and things like that. And you can literally roll your way through the entire thing. So you get to where it starts, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, how long it takes to get to the place that you need to get to, what might happen on the way, what happens when you get there, all the monsters involved, all that sort of stuff, all the way through. You can do it all with just random rolling.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you word everything right, it doesn't have to be specific to any particular genre, right? And I do like probability myself. The first games I played were with decimal dice and nothing else, or very little else, and everything was expressed as a percent. Oh, hello,
Sorry about that.
we've been invaded. Sounded like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But
Sorry.
I had uh, everything was expressed as a percentage chance to succeed, and I fail to see why going any different direction was really needed in gaming. But teach their own. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I play a lot of war game, that sort of thing too. Yeah. Exactly. And it's just when we were doing them in the army, it was the same thing. It was percentage chance to kill. It was just you're shooting at this. What's the chance you're going to make it go boom? This much chance based on distance and your skill with the weapon and the weapon's fire control and all that sort of stuff. But you could, yeah, that's the thing. If you stick to, in my opinion, sticking to percentages lets you go anywhere with it. It's easy to conceive. My chance of success is this much percentage. It's easy to view and can be applied to any particular genre. Yeah, I agree. But I have it for right. People can just see it. They don't have to. Well, what does this really mean? I have to get a 4 or 5 or a 6 on a 10. 8-sider. Why? If you just go, I got a 50% chance of hitting that tank at this range. It just makes more sense. Magenta was saying the same thing when we first started talking about this stuff years back. She goes, it just seems like it would be more intuitive for people to conceive these things as a percentile chance.
Right.
Yeah.
I still believe that way because percentages are just easier. I mean, otherwise you've got 4/8. You have to do a bunch of like reduction of fractions and then to end up with a 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just call it 50-50 to begin with? Everybody knows what that is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's some people that are complaining about modifiers and that sort of thing and having a 50-50 chance. They want everything. Like if I was going to take all the different possibilities in a tank versus tank conflict, cover, hull down, movement, target size, target aspect, the visibility, the fire control, and all that. That's why I use modifiers, because some of those apply, some of them apply differently. Some, depends on the situation. If I was going to write out a particular chance for each one of those scenarios separately, I would have a phone book filled with those.
Right.
People don't like to count modifiers anymore, so they're trying to get rid of them. Say, I'll just write out every possibility individually. That'd be a big stack of paper. Right. I mean, modifiers are variables to a situation that you can use or omit depending on the situation. I haven't seen anything that's come down the line since the 70s that really makes that less intuitive or less user friendly than just, if you're, this is how hard it is to hit something at this range. If it's a moving target, it's this much harder because it's moving, minus 15%. Not that hard. I don't, but it seems to me like sometimes all these different mechanics are just different marketing tools. People like variety or they like change for the sake of change. I'm tired of rolling D20s, they say. All right, well, here, let me sell you this thing that rolls 2 8-siders or something. It doesn't really make a lot of sense mathematically or design wise, but if I make that, I being the person who's I'm talking about makes that, maybe I can make some designer's notes that justify to make it sound like it's a good idea, and people go, yeah, I want something new. That sounds like a good new way to do it. And
Right.
maybe it's
Well, you
not.
can't sell something new unless you're making something new. So that's
Right.
the other thing. Yeah. So you got to make something different about it. Either the kind of dice or the some mechanism or something like that. So yeah, and it can be innovative. I mean, that's how innovation comes about, but it can also just be innovation for the well, like the new and improved that you put on the box of washing powder. It's new and improved. How is it improved? Well, the box has a grip handle. I don't know.
Right.
Whatever. It's the improvement doesn't necessarily mean it works better. It just could be some
Right.
minor thing that's
Or
different.
the change may sound like some innovative change, and really it's just a sake of change. My computer to computer.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere Microsoft wrote some blog post about how that was a good idea.
Yeah.
You no, no, you know what I mean? And it wasn't anything, but we're selling you that we need to keep, the revenue flowing. So we need to make the product again and tell you, here's why you need to buy it again. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Well, it sounds like so Payman's got a game that he's playing, and he's got a way of building samples and doing all of the probabilities to play a solo playing. So that's something. If you've got something like that, you could just basically bring someone else into it. I'm assuming, and then you've already got what you need to play a do-it-yourself game that way. It's just assigning the values to the different units and creating the setting and that kind of thing. And then you just bring in other players, and then you've got a full-fledged game.
Well, you could take, I mean, solo meaning individual, like playing by yourself. That's what they mean by solo. But I would assume that if you wanted to, you could bring in other people if you wanted to stop playing solo and continue playing the game. But yeah, I mean, I brought this up before. Rob Kuntz, everybody's listening to him because he's the last living. I think he's the last living founder or whatever. But it's just this: all you need is a way to generate random probabilities for events that have a chance of occurring, but also a chance of failing. That's really all you need. The rest you can role play out or whatever. But if you're going to have combat, you have to have combat mechanics. Combat mechanics start with, everybody hates math, but the fact is that when you compare things, you use math, you use numbers. 5 is bigger than 6. That's a comparison. What size is your shoe? 10? Mine are 12. I've got bigger feet than you do. That's still math. It's easy math. It's just comparison, but it's still math. What's the difference between mine and yours? Percentage wise. Well, now you're getting into division and stuff like that, but it's still so. But yeah, there's all sorts of ways of approaching it. What I did with my tank stuff is, I went to a particular source that did a lot of research into the situation. I listened to them for years talk about it, them being the authors. I looked at what they had. I satisfied myself in that this was accurate enough and this was comprehensive enough. And I just went and used their material and turned it into, well, actually they did it for me and then they gave it to me, but they, not just me, it was in the book for everybody, but they distilled it down into war game probabilities and war game and just, okay. And they're like, here, you can have that. So I just stripped that right off and slapped that down for the start of my war game. Now I've got all the percentage chance to hit, but those deadly modifiers, those big bad mean modifiers that some people attack all the time, that's what made it different. There's a difference if I'm hull down 300 meters out or just driving past you at 20 miles an hour slow 50 yards away. It's a different shot, and the modifiers make the shot different. That's all.
And modifiers don't always have, you don't have to use every modifier that could possibly be in existence. I mean, like, say for a sniper, you might want to use the wind speed and the wind direction if you're shooting a sniper rifle, because it can make a huge difference in a long range shot like that.
Right.
But if you're just if you've just got a handgun close range, the wind doesn't matter. You don't have to use it. Or if you're just, if you just want to assume that your sniper is good enough to consider the wind speed and directionality and wouldn't be taking the shot if he didn't have a shot, you could leave it out of the one for the sniper as well if you were so inclined. You really don't have to.
Right. You can go, and that it's a sliding scale of how far we want to take it. And,
Right.
Complexity versus simplicity, if you must. I really hate those terms, but I get it. It's the way that you communicate in the gaming space. So there you go. But in Payman, he says, I also experiment with level of uncertainty. I do that with armor penetration. As I say, I had a very, very significantly scientific set of data to work with. It was very precise and on point. And people says, well, things aren't always certain on a battlefield. Fair enough. So you have a set penetration, but that doesn't mean that that's it. There's a roll instead of that just tells you a little bit more or a little bit less. Whether you're going down or up is one die, and how much is the other die. And that way you never really know for sure. You might get lucky. It might go a little further. You might get unlucky. It won't go as far as penetration, and make the difference. Little bit of uncertainty like that. Yeah. Some people.
That's what the dice are for. That era.
That's what a lot of people say.
Yeah.
That's what
the dice are for the uncertainty. Yeah.
I don't need to insert more. That's just another philosophy. I don't need to insert more. That's what the dice are for. I always like that too. But I throw this in there because the as precise as the science is, it is an average that they're giving you at the end of the day in the book. So there's no reason to make it absolutely concrete firm. And the way I do that is with just a couple extra dice. Once the log is complete, I can replay the scenario over and over and try different strategies. Yeah, you play. It's just you can play test with yourself, and that way it's like fine tuning. It's like a radio station. Well, I can hear it, but it's kind of staticky. If I tweak it a little bit, it'll come in clear. And you do that with that kind of trial and error by going through the same. It's very tedious in some cases, going through the same scenario over and over, the same shot, just to make it. But that's how you do it. I did it with some friends as far as speed. I think I've told this story before. I'm an old man. I tend to repeat myself, but we got out the old chess clock and we went through the entire turn and on each side, and we would slap that, this is how long it took for me to complete the turn based on the rules we're using and the amount of forces that we have. So that when we made the thing, we sold it to people, we could say, here's how long it takes on average to play, to kind of wipe out that whole, those games take so long to play. So we were out there with might as well have been a stopwatch. We actually had a chess clock, though. You couldn't find a stopwatch.
There's one on your phone.
There is now. Yeah, this was a long time. This was way before phones. This is, but
that's the thing I've noticed too. Sometimes the things that would make a gaming experience a lot easier are readily at hand now, and people forget that they are, and just simple things like if you're dealing with modifiers in particular, I know some people are like intimidated by that because you're having to add up a column of multiple numbers. And then there's always that thing where if I'm adding up my numbers and then you're the opponent, that awkwardness of like, did you add those up right? Let me see what were the modifiers you added up? That kind of thing. Easily handled just with an old fashioned number line, with a 0 in the middle, 1 to 10 on one end, minus whatever on the other side. You just, you move forward a piece by the factor you're adding. If you've got, I get a +2 to my defense value because I'm in cover. but maybe I get a -1 because I was surprised. You can just you can play it out with a piece so the other player can see, okay, this is my advantage for being in cover. This is my disadvantage for being surprised. This is my advantage for having snipers on my team, whatever it is, whatever your modifiers are. And you're just moving a piece. It doesn't feel like addition anymore. And it's easy enough to do. Just write some numbers on a piece of paper, get a penny or a token or a pawn or whatever, and just move them back and forth until you land on the final one. And there's your answer. There's your final modifier. And everybody's on the same page together, and boom, you can just play.
Yeah. I don't see any problem with that per se. It's all a different approach, and that's why they say do it yourself. I mean, it's the way you want to do it. But I've often found that the desire for ultra simplicity obfuscates and complicates things just in a different way.
Right.
And like some people say, well, it's you're always, attached to where you started. Maybe so. But just a pair of percentile dice or a D20 seemed like enough. And just, your chance to hit was fine. A PK was all I needed. I played challenger rules and they had PKs and it was fine. I used PKs in the service. It was fine.
What does PK stand for?
Percentage chance to kill.
Okay. See, acronyms, you really you got to explain for us newbies out there.
Right. But it's just, your percentage chance. And then some people get into it's counterintuitive to roll low. There gets to it. This is where I get fussy. If you follow me on Twitter and you watch and you go, what's this guy splurging on about? Because some of these complaints get a little too fussy. And I feel like I'm a cat chasing a laser after a while.
Meow.
Right. I mean, that one's a little bit much. So for me, I've had people say, well, I won't play anything over 10 pages. Well, there's 14 pages in a risk manual. So you're pushing it. So,
now Risk, I have never played the original Risk. I've played the Star Wars Risk, and I've played a couple other variants, but one thing I will say with the Star Wars Risk that I noticed is that it has what I like to call, I'm going to use an acronym, FU cards, because they can, where it's basically you could be going along with a great strategy. You're playing the game the best way that you know how, and you're doing a good job. You're on the path to winning, and then someone draws a card that they can just throw down and just be like, yeah, all your best laid plans are just boom, blown up. There's no way you can win now. You're effed. And that's it, and that bugs me. I mean, there's an element of chance granted in any game, but to have like that just total annihilation with one card draw seems to me a bit much.
Some people like the whole Uno reversal type of mechanic where it's like, I threw a monkey in your monkey wrench in
your machinery. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I get that. And that can be, see, here's the thing. That can be fun.
That just makes me angry. I'll be honest. That just makes me rage.
Here's a couple of things. The first of all, the one in Star Trek Risk or Star Wars Risk, excuse me, was way too much. There was a couple of them where it was just too much. It was really brutal, and people were, like you say, it ended up being an FU card. The other thing is we didn't have as much jargon as they have today, but we did have the phrase beer and pretzels game. And that was the kind of thing that you did beer and pretzels with. You're having fun, snacking. Now, here's the thing. When you say having fun, people go, well, yeah, it's all about fun. Now, but it was just a different type of thing. We had as much fun on Friday night playing Axis and Allies, which wasn't very serious and really wasn't, after a while, even you were just goofing around, throwing dice, didn't have a lot of thought process to it. It also didn't have a lot of good gameplay to it. If you were drinking enough, not that we're all a bunch of drunks, but if you're drinking enough beer and having fun with your friends, you forget about the fact that game was decided in like two different places every time, no matter what, and ended up breaking down into, am I going to throw enough fours when I invade Moscow to win or die? Just kind of got stupid that way. But you play those kind of games on like a Friday, and then Saturday, before hangovers became a thing because you were getting older, you could drink a lot more beer before you felt the hangover. You could power through it or whatever. And we'd play on Saturday, and we'd play something a lot more serious, like Command Decision or a Giant Panzer Blitz or Squad Leader, something like that. And that would be fun too. But that kind of fun required a little bit more mental effort and concentration. You couldn't be slamming a six pack and playing ASL. There was too much to it. But that didn't mean it wasn't fun. Nowadays, anything that isn't beer and pretzels, a lot of people just don't consider fun. And that's why old man gets grouchy.
Or could it just be the more talkative people? Yeah. You never know. I don't know.
I missed it. Is that, were you dropping a hint or what? What do you?
I was just saying, sometimes the people who talk, the complainers, are louder than the people who are.
That's true too. There's a lot. Yeah, that could be true too. There does seem to be a lot of negativity in the space, no matter what. And
I worked for years in customer service. They were constantly reminding us. And I'm sorry if I cut you off there, but it's just, that's a constant reminder that you don't get the calls from the people who are happy.
You get me right. There does seem to be an underlying cultural thing within a lot of gaming, and there always has been, that analysis is negative. And I'm the same way, to the point where, but like, I had a friend who wouldn't go to movies with me anymore because you wouldn't go to movies with me anymore because I like to go to a movie, and then when it's over, I like to go have some food and talk about the movie in depth. And that tends to sometimes be critical of the movie, even if it's a movie I enjoy. There's things that I like, and that was a relaxing and interesting conversation for me. For other people, Jesus, this guy rips on everything. That's what one of my friends said. I don't want to go to a movie with him. He cuts everything to pieces. Never really thought of it that way, but that does tend to be something that a lot of nerds do. So I tend to get a little bit too infuriated at the complaints about the difficulty of these games and stuff like that. And I should probably take a little bit more grain of salt, because you're not, like you say, you're not going to hear something unless it's almost like, if you don't invoke that kind of stuff in your conversation at some point as a gamer, people start questioning your credibility as a great gamer, gets nuts. Payment says, I was a geek kid in the squad leader days. I couldn't find anyone who would get into that level of complex. Axis and Allies and Risk were more popular. Yeah, but I was satisfied with any war game. Even Flames of War and Bold Action are more about selling. Yeah.
Oh, you're not wrong about that. Well, you could tell by the way, like Flames of War, isn't that the one that sold the miniatures in the boxes? And then to get the ones that were unique, you had to buy like 100 of them, and it was just
that was the Axis and Allies miniatures game.
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay,
yeah, that was a cute little the Cracker Jack box way of selling things. Yeah, that wasn't all that fun.
Oh yeah, well they patterned that after, was it Magic the Gathering that made millions of dollars doing that?
Some people made big money that way. They would buy tons of that stuff, and then they would pick it out and find the one that was cost more than the original package did, and then sell them. And now where's all that stuff? In a landfill. There's a great example. The other thing about that game is a great example of is the desire for simplicity over shouting everything else, because there was a lot of people that when that came out were hoping for, just like Payman was saying, Squad Leader was a lot for a lot of people. Now I can play Squad Leader like stuff without having to have a phone book like rule book. And then they got the rule book for that thing, and it was so overly simplistic and vague that people immediately started writing their own rules for it. Talk about do it yourself. There was a whole Yahoo group where they had written out, this stuff is, and here's how you play it, so it's more like a war game. I forget how the one guy put it, but he says, we were all expecting a light tactical war game. Instead, we got something to the effect that we got a collector's, miniatures game or something like that, and that's not what we were looking for. We were looking
Right.
for Squad Leader Light. So they made Squad Leader Light, and then they had fun using the stuff. But
Right.
they oversimplified it to the point where people are like, this isn't even a full game, So you kind of got to temper some of that stuff so that you can have some interesting play with it. A lot of our games in the past were, they started with basic, then you moved into intermediate, even the Squad Leader. You can start with, let's just play with some infantry, maybe a light machine gun, get it all down pat, figure it out, play a couple scenarios. All right, now let's put in some mortars, and maybe a heavy gun, maybe like a light cannon or something like that, direct fire. And then the next step was, all right, now we're going to bring in some off-bird artillery and a tank or something like that. And you just kind of keep adding to it, and that was fine if you were really, here's the thing. When we got that stuff, that was, we want to play this game, and we don't feel like we can DIY it. We don't know enough about wargaming. We were all exploring it still. We were all still understanding it. It was just all new to us. So when they handed a Squad Leader, yeah, I was like, wow, this is a little bit much, but we really want to play, and it looks cool. So yes, the rules were a fence. People say we want more approachable rules. And yes, the rules made it seem a little less approachable. But instead of going, that fence is too high, forget about it, we wanted to scale that fence. We wanted to get over there, because on the other side of that fence was a fun and interesting experience that we were looking for. It was on the back of the box. So we learned it. So it wasn't
I just have a question on this, and you can tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here, but considering that these games do all have that basic, intermediate, and advanced kind of approach, I'm wondering if what's happened over years is that people who have become proficient with the games like Advanced Squad Leader, just want to play with new people, but they don't want to go backwards to the basic level games. And then when you drag someone new into that and you start off with the advanced level rules, it's too much for a new player.
I think there's some of that.
Gives them the impression that it's too complex, because you're playing with an experienced player who
yes, you're right,
won't back it down to basic for you.
That's right. That's right. Well, and there's that. There's a couple of things, and I don't want to sit around bad mouthing too much, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of those guys weren't very friendly people. And when you showed up to be the new player, you got this from people, and they became an insular kind of elitist crowd, and that didn't help. The other thing
they were mean girls,
a little bit, and the other thing was, even if you tried to ignore that, as I did, and start playing anyway, all they would do was make it sound like it was torture. They would use phrases for the game that they loved to play, and like laborious chore and overly complex, and invoke all these same buzz phrases, and then wonder why they do all this for years.
Why I can't find new players.
Right. And then they would start getting older, and some guys would, well, I've got married and I can't play anymore. Or unfortunately, because this game has been around so long, some of these guys start dying off, sadly, because nobody lives forever. Now they're looking around going, how do we get people to play? Wargaming's dying off. Well, A, some of you were assholes. B, all you've done is made it sound like it was water torture to do, and you wonder why everybody's like, well, maybe I'll go play Flames of War or something like that. So they just, but here's the funny thing. If an outsider came and criticized the game that they were having a conversation criticizing while they played, it was like two brothers. They could call each other names, but if you called them one, then they turn on you. They would do that. They would do that stuff. They were very territorial and weird about it. And
Well, this all sounds like human nature, though.
It is, but
Yes.
that was why war games. Now, and not
Yeah.
everybody was like that. I could sit down and play Tractics. Somebody mentions Tractics, and that was not one of those.
Yeah.
Some people always made it sound like that was more than it was to me. I had a lot of fun playing that. Or other games, Command Decision, and I played with people. They were older than me. That was another thing. I was a lot younger than some of these guys, and so that made it a little bit difficult. But I sat down with guys that were 15 years older than me or more, and some of them were very nice. Handshake, how you doing? Nice to meet you. They'd sit and play and they'd talk and they'd hang out with you and have fun. Even the one that was smoking like a chimney in my face, that was driving me insane. He was a very nice man. I forget his name. He was a real nice dude. Much older than me, but geez, one after another after. I find out later, here's this guy was a vet, and he was smoking. Well, but anyway, so they didn't do themselves any favors. But I do understand that there is some, I just put it to you this way: some of the complaints I don't understand, but I've looked at Squad Leader and said, here's something where you see a lot of people say, well, that would be interesting, but damn, that's too much. First thing is, like I say, a lot of that's hyperbolic. Secondly, there is a core set of things to learn. And once you've got them, you've got the game. Everything else is just more data for, there's a lot of combatants in World War II. And this thing is comprehensive. It doesn't just have the Germans and the British and the Americans and the Russians. It's got Brazil, and Hungary and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff is just, here's some different.
There were a lot of moving parts to World War II. It was a world war after all.
Right,
yeah.
Right. There was on total, there was some, like at one point, like 120 different nations that had contributed at least something to the war effort in Europe. So, and again, the Brazilians sent people to North Africa and stuff like that. And all those little minor countries are all covered. And they all have some sets of rules specific to their situation at the time. So once you've got that core set, which isn't half as difficult as it seems, the rest is just this giant fortress built around it of all sorts of different information and things like that. So there's that deal. But it is involved enough that it's one of these war games like 40K, where I'm not a war gamer that plays war games. I'm a ASL player. It's not, and they themselves say it. It's not a hobby. It's a lifestyle. That's all you're playing, because it is involved. Plus, it's expensive as hell. Have you ever seen a shelf that encompasses everything ASL's made since 1980?
No.
Oh my God! And the stuff coming out now, a lot of it is damn near $100 per module. So, the investment just in money and space. So you end up just being that kind of player. Now I've got a light version. Other people have made light versions, and the difference between my version, light version, and their light version is it literally is that. Here's just ASL, but with less countries, or a few less rules or something like that. Where mine is, here's a game that won't split your head open, but you could go take an ASL scenario card and use it. Not every value on it or every number is going to jive, but you could go, okay, this is, but I can take all these, little squads and make my own thing and just play something that isn't ridiculous and adds a little bit of role-playing game into it, as opposed to a hardcore.
That's interesting. You add role playing, because since we are talking about crafting your own role playing game, and I would like, sorry, that's my notifications. I do like the war game to a certain extent, but one thing I've noticed with them is that in most cases, they seem to focus more about the tactical, strategic, the impersonal level, where you're looking at the map from a God's eye view and you're looking at, large numbers of things. There isn't a whole lot of, like with role playing, you've got a character that has personality, that has quirks, that has things like that. So, um, the idea of that melding of wargaming, the strategy and the tactics with the elements that role playing has, with where the people matter too. I find that fascinating. I think that's probably I would love to play a game like that where it's, like your general's personality plays a role and how if you're running a campaign for whichever nation you're representing in a war game, your leadership matters, you know, the personality of the people involved. You know what I'm saying? Am I making sense?
I'm the personality of the. You talking about
So
me, the player, or the?
no, so like say I am and I'm not even sure of the terminology. Sorry, I'm not much on the military side, but say I'm General Patton. I'm commanding all the forces of the U.S. in World War II, and
Mhm.
I've got different generals under me, different
Oh
leaders.
yes, yeah, right.
Their personalities make a difference in
Mhm.
how the war is done.
Mhm. There's some degree to reality of that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, like one guy might be a good tactician, another guy might be really good at inspiring.
They may hate each other. The
Right. And
Montgomery
then
versus Patton type of thing.
yeah, and then do they work together or
Yeah.
not? Do they get in each other's way? How do you
Mhm.
have to handle all that kind of
Sure.
stuff?
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of interesting to me.
Right. And that's why I tell people. I says, here's the thing. There, you want to get rid of player overhead. You don't, with the rules and all that. Quit looking for something that's become so watered down it's gone in the wrong direction. Other thing, I don't, hey, be too critical because people get real defensive about games. But some of this stuff, like it goes too far in the other direction. Like we mentioned, Axis and Allies miniatures, to the point where it's so simplistic. It's you know what the hell is this? Yeah, people and the same people that were saying we don't want this to be overly burdensome was like, yeah, we got to write some rules for this. Change their mind real quick. So you need a difference. But one of the great ways to do that, one of the best ways to do that, one of the best ways to play war games is to have a judge, have a referee, go Kriegspiel. You ain't never played it. If you have never played uh, double blind with a referee, you've never really done it. And people get real mad when you tell people you haven't done it right. They want to, especially in RPG, there's this whole movement of people that start to act like they're being, oppressed if you tell them this is the wrong way to play. I'm just saying, if you've never done it, try it. I guarantee you, you're not going back. It's a it's a completely different experience. One, if you have a referee, you have complete limited information. Fog of war. You only see what your people on the battlefield would see. It's extremely tense. It's extremely different decision making and much more interesting to try to figure out what might be happening and how it's going to play out than as you mentioned earlier, the God's eye view where you see everything and what's about to occur before it occurs. You can if you're playing a Civil War uh, hex and counter game and you don't have fog of war, you can see that person flooding the right flank, or you can
Yeah.
see that cavalry moving up from behind the line. And you'd never know that was happening if you were the guy on the ground running that thing at the time. So you get to play a role and play from that perspective if you have a referee, which just ends up being the same thing as a DM in a role playing game.
Right.
Secondly, now all you have to do is learn some basics about how things are rated, and maybe even not that. A real good suit. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
We can hear you, like there's a lot of you're going
All
thumper.
right.
Um, just so you know. But anyway, um, but a real good referee running this stuff will minimize how much of the rules you need to know, will describe things in a narrative fashion as opposed to a rules fashion. Instead of here seeing defender retreats 4 on your CRT, DR4. Okay, well, I got to go read what that means. The dude or gal or whoever's the ref will, will give you a reply from the commander of that unit, under heavy artillery fire, had to withdraw position, taking up a new line here, or whatever it is. And you'll get, that's more exciting. It's more immersive. And now you don't have to learn acronyms and all that crap. So it'll minimize your, as I put it, the player workload. And you can focus on just making the interesting decisions that makes the game fun and tense, as opposed to what page is that chart on, and all that stuff. Payment and that, yeah, and that's why that's why what I'm trying to sell people, and I guess maybe I'm not doing myself a tremendous service by always raging about the complexity thing, but it does get you can't even sell something like this to most people because they immediately go, oh, he played squad leader. Well, what about this one? How many charts? Bad, too many roles. They just, it focuses into, you could never do that because it all takes too long. It's too hard. Instead of just opening up and going, okay, we're going to just let all that melt away and take a look at the thing without this constant, drive towards complaining about how everything takes too long and is too hard. Because none of this is, all you're doing is what I envision, what I'm trying to get people to do, what I'm trying to frankly sell as a service and a product is you just show up and you go, here's your briefing. Here's where you're at. We put you in the time, where is it? Normandy. All right, here you are. You're on USS such and such. It's the night before. Here's your final orders. Here's your, here's the beach you're hitting. Here's the plan. Here's where you're supposed to rally when you get inland, ABC, all that sort of stuff. Here's the people under you, like Magenta was talking about. You have people under you. Maybe they're NPCs. If you're lucky, they're other players. I played a game where I had a full chain of command for an entire modern brigade. Airland 2000 brigade, 10 battalions, 1 brigade. I had everybody. I had the brigade CO. I had an S3. I had all the battalion commanders and players all the way down to company commander on that side. All human beings, all chain of command, all had to take orders and coordinate with one another. That was a blast. That was Gen Con. That's what I want. I want to play like I'm always playing at Gen Con. Big and well-organized, large scope stuff. And you can do that on the internet. We can do that for you if you just go, well, okay, I'm going to stop talking about how many charts are in the game and just look at the game. So you go in there, you sit down, you get your briefing. We put you in the mood. We put you in the, in the environment. And instead of, what's the armor class of this tank or whatever? No, man, just, hey, 3rd Battalion, you need to go and hit that right flank right now. Write your orders. It'll happen. The GMs will do all the computations for you. All the rules, all the checking, all the cross-referencing will all be done. And all you'll have to do is give the order and get the reply from the unit saying, yes, sir, we took that hill and here's our casualties. Or, oh, the attack failed and we had to fall back. Whatever the context of the situation is, but you'll get it in that narrative context. And all of a sudden, wargaming won't seem like the laborious chore that it's always marked as. It'll be an interesting role-playing situation where you're on a battlefield fighting a war. And we can do that with everything.
What's ironic about this to me is that, so when it first started with Dungeons and Dragons, you had a group, Gary Gygax and his buddies and everybody involved in it, who were basically experienced wargamers who decided, what would be really cool is if we took the elements of wargaming and applied them to fantasy genres so that we could play out battles and concepts from our favorite, like Lord of the Rings style fiction that we like, or that kind of thing, fantasy role playing. Now what you're basically doing is going back to, let's take the elements that all those years of D&D fantasy role playing where you have a game master, a dungeon master, whatever, who is making the game exciting and giving you that experience of, I don't know what's going to happen next, the narrative storytelling aspects of it, and the role playing part, and you're changing it into where it's going back to its roots.
Yeah.
But bringing with it all of the things that were learned from the role playing games and all those years intervening between when it started off as wargaming, went into the fantasy realm, and then now is coming back to its origins of war games.
Yeah, the split was, I don't really understand why it split again, or even how it happened. One day you just, you're not paying attention. One day you're, but we never really did it any differently than this. As players back in the day, we'd set up the night before. And we wouldn't just, like I hear people talking like James brought up Tractics, and I always get saucy when people, but the thing is with Tractics was, okay, they had a lot of charts. Most of them did. It's just it's a convenient way to organize detailed information into a way that should be easy to read through in a glance, as opposed to writing it out or listing it in a big long list. Well, you had to go through those in a book. Well, in Tractics, they didn't come in a book. They came, and you could go copy them. The first thing we did when we got a game was we went to the library. The library had a copy machine. Even in my one-horse town, it had a copy machine. And we'd go there, and we'd make sure that every player had every chart that they needed, or a copy of it. We'd take those copies and we'd put them in a clipboard. Okay, now everybody's got that. So now you don't have a book that you have to page for. You don't have to look around at the table or ask to have it passed to you like it's Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody's got one, and they can just do it themselves and take a look. And then later on, I got a giant whiteboard, and I mean big, and I hung that bad boy right on the end of my table. Now all you got to do is look left, and I'd have all the charts on there for people to just look at it. It was all done, just copied through. There's lots of little techniques that you can do. Crafting little things like Magenta was talking about, making a number line for people. We had all sorts of things we made out, and we tried to make them thematic. We tried to get into it. We had our own maps, we had our own tack maps, and we had grease pencils, and we had the plastic and all that sort of, and we were making, here's what we're going to do. And we'd hand it to our teammate. We never played one-on-one either. There was always a group of people playing, 2 or 3 versus 2 or 3 or more if we could, teams, and we talked to the team member. Okay, I'm going to take we'd be drawing it out like we were John Madden on the football game, with the lines and the arrows and we get into it. And all the logs and all that stuff would all be set up to be thematic, to make you feel like you're in some sort of command post, making orders and making plans for your people out there on the field. So we're always playing from the perspective of a role-playing game to begin with. So.
Well, but the thing, I think the difference that I was referring to is not so much that you were playing it as playing the role of the teams that you were playing, but the whole concept of having a referee, game master, dungeon master type of role.
Yeah, I don't know where
so you have because that's one of the things that I think has made the war game itself seem more complex. That whole not having a referee to basically, well, first provide that fog of war, because it's not as exciting when you can see, exactly where your enemy's positions are.
That part I know why. Right, you're right. There's nothing more tense and more realistic than having that double blind. Now, the reason that faded away, in my opinion, my experience, I think, is just this. There's always the myth that you hear from people going, well, yeah, sure. In 1979, you could play those giant war games and didn't have to worry about time because you were just a kid. You didn't have anything to do. You didn't have to go to work. You didn't have the 5 to 9. You didn't have to pay for your kids' college and all that stuff. But that's not always true. If you had nothing to do all summer long in 1979, I didn't know you. I didn't know anybody did, because we always had people trying to put us in, send us to the rec department. Idle hands for the devil's workshop was the and they were always trying to get you to do something. And if it wasn't something like that, it was chores and all that sort of stuff. The other thing was, in the house on a day like this, no, out you go, Junior. So
And drink from the water
and
hose. I
drink
know.
from the
I've
water.
done
All,
it too. That's
all
right. That is
there's
not
a,
a myth, by the way. We
there's
did
a lot of
drink from the garden hose.
right. There's a lot of bullshit on the internet. But a lot of that Gen X, we were the whole tough thing or whatever is beside the point. But having to drink from the water hose, not spending a lot of time out, usually staying out till dark, all those kind of things aren't just cliche. They're not made up. That totally was it. And there was a lot of reasons why we didn't have a lot of time to play these games. So when we did, we got into them heavy. And because we didn't have a lot of time, I wasn't going to be the odd man out. I wasn't going to be the facilitator for your fun at the expense of mine. I want to play too.
Right.
So eventually the referee thing went by the wayside because everybody wanted to get in and shoot the tanks, not be the guy keeping the score. But
right.
when you went to Gen Con and other conventions, that changed. And that's why I'm always hyping up the convention experience, because you always had organized play, better organized play, where there were referees and stuff like that. And now, as a service, and it's a service, I ain't gonna pull any punches. I'm not, but you can have that minimal, not financially burdensome, but a service. And you can have that experience without having to sacrifice your fun time. You can be the fun time. We'll be the ones doing the work.
Right.
And you can
That does
experience.
make a difference to make it interesting and unique every time for each group of people, because anytime, I think even with Payman comments about, doing solo play, you can have a different result every time just because of the random nature of what's going on. So, and you could go backwards and redo something and get a completely different result the next time you do it, because it is that type of a system where it's going to change depending on, the roll of the dice or other factors.
Yep. So that was our idea of do it yourself, was to get into it. You have to, now you want to hear some of the more crazy things. Here's some of the good.
Okay. Now, give me something crazy. I'm always up for that.
So after I get out of the service, I have a person that picked me up because I didn't have anybody else that would do it for me on that day. And anyway, this guy drags me to some store, long story short. And I meet these people at the store that are, hey, we're interested in wargaming. We're kind of new to it. This guy tells us, and the guy goes, I brought this guy. He's really a war gamer. He'll hook you up. He'll tell you all about it. Okay. So anyway, I get talking to these people, and they want to do something different. They want to really make a splash with the wargaming. What can they do different than everybody else? So what the guy was already doing is he was already hosting laser tag stuff and paintball stuff, where he was renting out the guns to people, and then he'd organize the play, and they'd play in these farm fields and stuff like that. He wanted to do the same thing with wargaming. So, so we played out on the shoreline of Lake Michigan in the sand, where we would play with 1/32 scale stuff. It's real big. It's like G.I. Joe size stuff, damn near. Actually, it's not that big, but it's pretty big. And we'd play using yardsticks and giant tape measures that look like they should be for football chains and stuff like that, and play real big stuff. And we'd get people to come and play. It'd be like a spectacle. When you add a little something, when you add size and scope to something, it becomes a spectacle for people to see. Now it's not you playing some weird board game huddled over it on the park bench. Now it's 50 yards worth of beach that have tanks this big on them, and people are looking around, and all of a sudden you start get people wanting to play. Yeah, I'll play. What does it cost? Well, it's just a little, so we started doing that. He wanted to take it further. He wanted to replicate something that he had done seen done at Fort Knox. And he always wanted to do something that was beyond his financial means, except this one time when he sold a house and all of a sudden he was flush with cash. So I go over to this guy's house, and in his garage, he had built this observation thing. It was all wood, and like wood, not balsa wood, fucking wood. This thing must have weighed a ton. I was waiting, and he put it in his garage, and you walked up 2 steps, which doesn't seem like a lot, but inside this garage, it was a lot of space, and it was all high. And the idea was he was going to put a giant wooden board, and these risers around it, and there would be this command center that you ran the game from. So you walk up these stairs and step into this small room, and the room had a windshield, and it had a place for a computer on one end, and it had a place for a megaphone and all this. And the people would be playing on the garage floor with this board. You'd have giant war games, and you would be running them from the control center inside. And he wanted to charge the service for that. One time we did it on a baseball diamond. Anyway, the whole thing was just people trying to find ways to take this to the next level, where you're not just opening up a board and laying out some pieces. You're being brought into this facility, whatever it is, a garage or outdoor facility, and there would be people briefing you, and we were in character. We had a buddy of ours that was that he had the Smokey Bear, and he would kind of bark at you like a drill sergeant, not mean, but just thematic. It's kind of that theme park type of thing that we were trying to go for. It was all about just pushing that whole. And then at one point we never had any money, so this was just pie in the sky dreaming. But we had come up with this idea where we wanted to have a circular facility, and there would be sections that would have different genres. So there's sci-fi, World War II, Western, whatever, as you walked around this circle. And in each facility, there'd be at least one person to help you, because we'd have some retail stuff for sale, like miniatures and things like that. And they would be in the proper period costume. There'd be a stormtrooper walking around at the Star Wars thing, giving you instructions and helping you out, stuff like that. And each section,
stormtroopers never help you out.
Right. Yeah. Stuff like that. And they would be like that. They wouldn't be rude. I mean, you don't want to be rude, but they'd kind of be, like, move along. They would kind of be a little pushy and be all authoritative and stuff like that. And each
put golf meets D-Day. I like that.
Exactly that. That's what this guy thought was going to get people through the door, and we just never had the money to do it, but we kept thinking about it. And the things were going to there would be doorways, but the doorways would be decorated like a portal. So as you walk from one section to the other, you were going through these portals, to another dimension, and one would be knights in shining armor and cavalry stuff, and it would just be all that kind of fantasy, like fantasy Warhammer, Bretonia, miniatures on the shelves and shit like that,
It's a great idea for all-inclusive resort, honestly.
Yeah, right.
That's what you want. You want something immersive like that, where you show up, you get you can buy the costumes appropriate to the whatever genre you're in, stay on the right, each floor could have its own theme, and
exactly. And
completely. That would be a lot of fun. I know a lot of people would enjoy that, actually.
It would. It's just that, it's the reality of getting somebody to invest in it or having the money to do it and all. And as cool as it sounds, we had enough trouble just having a retail store at all. And that and then that eventually, because the money and all that sort of stuff. So, but if you on the internet, it's not as cool. I get it. It's not as cool as really being there and having LARP people and all that stuff. But doing it online, you at least get some of that stuff. At least you could get the gaming experience, and you wouldn't be limited to, hey, I heard about this cool place. Well, where is it? It's in Philadelphia. Well, shit, I'm in LA. I can't fly out there just to play a game. So now everybody everywhere can partake in it. And at least, it's a consolation prize comparative to something that sounds kick-ass as having a hotel full of war games, but it's something. And you can still have that double blind situation. There's enough software out there with VTTs, tabletop simulator, stuff like that. This system where people can join in and play role-playing games. You got enough software where you can do double blind easy as pie, and have a staff that can help. It doesn't necessarily, you could have more than one GM if you've got a big system, and play giant games like that. And I think that for role playing, the people who go, well, I just like hex crawls. Okay, we can do that. But we can, inside your hex crawl, there could be people playing a one-off module. There could be people playing a domain game, whatever. It's all in the same game space, even if it's people that are completely separated from one another, both physically and gaming-wise. Right. Imagine being in a one-off and then having the events around you occur be part of a different or larger scenario, and a group of people playing their own game come across you. You might end up being mixed together for some reason. There's all sorts of ways where that can generate really interesting conversation and encounters between different gaming parties that didn't even realize they were going to have it. And you have that, like we started an hour and a half ago talking about, that kind of AI system without AI, where the NPC you run into may not be an NPC at all. It might be a PC from a different party or a different game or a different server or something like that.
There you go. So,
that's what we're looking for.
Payman, that collaboration always sounds like a good idea. I'd love to hear your ideas about making it palatable for the math haters, because that is something I think a lot of people are not. I don't know if it's all hatred of math as much as it is that it's just kind of like math appears to be inconsistent with what a lot of people would consider fun. Like it's a fun killer. You know what I mean? And I think that may be just enough to make it to where I'm trying to play a game for fun. I don't want to have to work that hard at it. You know what I mean? If people think of math as just work. And judging by the nature of my math teachers when I was going to school, I can see why people have a bad taste in their math. For math. Yeah, they were all nasty, weren't they?
Awful. Yeah.
They were all, it's like the worst. It's like if you could just like go through society wise and just pick out people who didn't like other people and make them teachers, that's where your math teachers come from, with a few exceptions. I did have a couple of really good math teachers too. But
my math
out of
teachers,
and I went to 17 different schools in my 12 years of high school. So, but yeah,
I had a captain.
But the majority of consistently, my math teachers were not the fun one. History teachers were fun. They were always kind of more. Oh well, you may have had a different. I guess history teachers, your experience may vary. English teachers were always, for me, always a lot more. With one exception, who was way too focused on grammar and punctuation, but everybody else they were the creative. I don't know. I just liked my English teachers.
I think the biggest irony about the thing with me and the math is that it was never as difficult as a lot of people. Like there's some games, like there's a game I played a variant of Europa. Europa is a massive World War II, probably the monster of all monsters, war games. And I played a variant of that. And the variant was fairly detailed. There was math in there that did involve long division. And most people would go, there's no effing way I'm doing that. But the thing with that game was when they walked up to it, they would never know that long division was even proper, because they'd say, look at the side. The map looked like you could use it for a bedspread. There was 1,400 pieces for the Russians in one scenario. It was just, I mean, it was ridiculous. If you weren't playing with at least 15 people, you weren't going to play this game at all. So we played with roomfuls of people, but it did require some long division at times, and that was like, but it was the experience of playing with a group of people in something that deep and that much scope, where we're like, yeah, okay, we don't care if there's spreadsheets and mathematics involved. The other, that's the exception. Most other games, when you're talking about mathematics, you're talking about like adding and subtracting negative and positive integers, like modifiers, stuff like that. Well, I've got a -2 because I've got a cursed sword, but I got a +3 because I've got +3 strength. That's not that really, that's not that hard to calculate. It's really not that big of a deal. So I get mad when people talk about it for a couple of reasons. I've been hearing it since 1970 something. It's repetitive, and it's usually hyperbolic, and it chases people away from wanting to play when it's not that bad. The irony is I've made my own systems and I play my own games, and I'm not looking to try to make people take an algebra course. I'm not steering myself towards complicated math. I'm quite the opposite. I'm looking for ways to minimize it and hide it out. But I do realize, and think everybody else should, that at the end of the day, if you're going to play a war game or you're going to have combat in RPG, it's going to require that you have numbers for comparison between the combatants in order to determine the resolution. It's not that hard. You count change every day of your life. You count how, there's a lot of times you're doing math in your head, you don't even realize you're doing it. So it's just a comparative thing. But I'm not
really kind of this easy. Okay, Google.
Right. And that's the other thing.
Some of the following numbers, boom,
Right. There was reasonable arguments, reasonable complaints, and then there was unreasonable. Example. Okay, you want to play this game, but it has too much math, but you still want to play the game. What's the solution? Calculator. Mm-hmm. Well, if I got to play any game that requires a calculator, I don't want to play. But you just said you wanted to. So you hand somebody a solution, and when they put down the solution, you realize that no matter what they're telling you, they didn't really want to play that game. Because when we had an obstacle, we went and tried to hurdle the obstacle to play the game because we really want to play it. I've had people go, well, and now the time matters on this one. Well, I have this computer assist that makes this game playable. Well, I don't want to have to lug my computer to the game table. Sparky, it's 1991. Well, how much does that laptop weigh? 6 pounds? You'll be, I mean, if you can't lift 6 pounds, come on, man. It's not like you're hauling your pet, your old pet computer that weighed 80 pounds or whatever. You're talking about a laptop. So sometimes people are just
a phone. I mean, honestly,
right. Now it's in your hand.
Computer, yeah. My phone is more powerful than the first 3 or 4 computers that I owned combined. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean there is that difference. But Payman, I would definitely love to take you up on the option to collaborate, to discuss ideas. You're always welcome to come up on the show and participate that way. But if you would like also to reach out to us, my email address for the show related stuff, if anytime you want to send that, is campaignsandconquest.magenta@gmail.com. I'll just type it out for you. And anyone who wants to send me any kind of comments, you can always reach me there. So
MERP. That was another one everybody got into. Being too difficult. MERP. Middle Earth role playing. Everybody's hating on ice these days. I used to love ice products.
So yeah, just send me an email. We'll keep in touch that way. And anytime I communicate with Storm regularly, so we can, make sure we keep in touch and get back with you.
Right. So we kind of covered play testing. We're talking about, just on paper, player feedback, encouraging. Let's see. as far as making your own worlds, well, we're going to do that. I mean, we have been doing that. We do it on and off. We're making our own world. So we want to finish that up. Um, Starting up Patreon and its competitor, which is Locals. We're doing both of those, where we're going to start showing off some exclusive to people that want to join up, some more detailed do-it-yourself creations of ours and how to get involved with that. Some more instructional things. We like to do this. We're going to continue doing these shows. One thing we've seen in ourselves, there's always room for improvement. There's always need to be at least somewhat self-critical so that you can improve, is that we tend to really enjoy the conversation, and because we like to be sociable. But in some cases, it seems that has detracted away from what we initially set out to talk about. And some people find it a little too
Rambling.
to
Yes.
stick with, hey, I
Sorry.
want to be right, and it's both of our faults. We do it, and just because we like to be friendly and we like to, chat back and forth. So what we've decided to do is to keep it that way because we think that it works out, as long as we keep it a little bit limited. It's a great way to meet people like Payman and to get them involved and to keep in touch with them and be sociable and all that. We're going to get a little, not cold or calculating or unfriendly, but a little bit more on track and
Right.
right, behind, with the Patreon and the Locals, where you can see some of this instruction. It'll be just that, instruction and on point, because there it's not, hey, we just flipped on a camera to go mess around and have some fun. There it's a more of a transactional situation where people are paying for support. They're paying, to get something out of it. And we have plenty to give to you. We have material and maps. We have new worlds that you can get involved with and purchase, techniques and all sorts of instructional things of worth. So we're not going to waste your time with the happy talk behind those systems. So, but here we could just chill, be cool, lay back, and just, how are you, just be, what would you call it? Kicked back? Is that how you'd say it, Magenta? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of more of a laid back, creative type of interactive forum and format, but we can be serious when we need to be. So, I agree with you in putting some separation on the two. So, absolutely on board with that.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that'll be kind of our two faces. But it's worth your while. We hope you get involved. It's not financially cataclysmic, but in order to keep going, we need something to keep going. You know what I mean? And it isn't going to happen at YouTube no matter what, because YouTube has just kind of changed the way that it functions. So we've been talking a lot about our products, to the point of being a tease, and we thought it was time to stop teasing and start putting up. So that's where we're going with it. So, and I chose both platforms because I get a lot of this from people. Well, I where are you at? Here. Oh, I kind of had a bad situation with that company and I don't want to do it. Okay, whatever. So if you're everywhere all the time, you've got more of a chance of not having people go, well, I'd love to, but I can't because. So now you've got options. So we've got both Locals and Patreon. I don't know if you can stream simultaneously on both, so there might be some differentiation between the two as far as content and what's going on. But for the most part, we'll try to mirror them so that you have those options as a watcher. And we certainly hope you can help us and our and that we provide something that makes it worthwhile to do so that we can continue doing this. Otherwise, we might have to go get a real job. And wouldn't that suck?
Yeah, real job. I have one of those. But yeah, it's well, I had one of those, I should say. Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm looking forward to doing some other things on different platforms as well, and expanding my contributions to making this something that takes off. And ultimately, I think our goal is to be a place for anyone who likes any kind of gaming, whether it's RPGs or war games or any kind of strategy role playing games of any type, to have a place to collect. And let me check the emails here. I see your comment there, Payment. I'll make sure just a second.
Yeah, any type of gaming except for
Oh yeah, I
Monopoly.
did get it.
We don't want any part of that shit. Just kidding.
What'd you say?
I said any type of gaming except Monopoly. We don't want any part of that shit.
Oh, Monopoly is always a losing proposition, except for that one person.
Right. Right. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to hate on Monopoly, apparently. So you got it? Good. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Email received. Understood. Thank you very much for your contribution. We will stay in communication and talk further about that through email. Appreciate it. Yes, sirree. So, but yeah, what you're gonna, the first thing to see to wrap up the whole DIY do it yourself thing is, if you want to do it yourself, you want to make your own world. The stuff that we've made up makes that easy and gives you a great framework to build your house on. You have everything to start with. You can randomly determine a majority of some of the more tedious stuff, and then with what you get, use your imagination to fill in the rest and round it out as a functional and usable world in whatever system you want to put it in. It is, as they say, system agnostic. Hopefully, if you don't mind me saying, you'll choose Paracosmic Convergence, which is my system, and that's also available for people to look at and to purchase. I would love for you to use it. I'm real proud of it. But again, we like to offer options, and so there is a system agnostic version as well. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Okay. Well, I think we have reached our 2-hour mark, and Payman, we will stay in touch with you. If you don't mind, I will share your email address information with Storm so he can reach out to you as well for other details and working with you from here. But it is time for me to turn into a pumpkin, unfortunately, this evening. I do spend some of my time taking care of my mom. She's having a bit of a rough night tonight, so I'm going to call it at the 2-hour mark, if that's okay with everybody.
He says, I think you're thinking along the same lines. I'd like to steal from you, so I'd figure I'd pay you up front. Oh, thank you.
Well, hey, yeah, I mean, expanding the knowledge and using, I mean, obviously, if we're putting out a book with gaming rules, we intend for people to use them. So that's a part of the process. So, but anyway, I do want to wrap things up for this evening, and we're going to have another show on Wednesday. So we will be, getting into stuff on Wednesday. Going to be at this coming Wednesday. I may need to come in a little bit later for some other things going on. So
will do.
Storm is going to be starting at the regular time, though, which is 7 p.m. So feel free to join us at 7 p.m. And then I'll be coming in at a time when I can, because I've got a appointment with my grandkids this week, but I will definitely be here on Wednesday, just may not be right at 7. So Storm's going to have to carry the load by himself. You think you're up to it, Storm?
I think we can cover something. Maybe you will jump in on that, or maybe jump in on chapter 2 of Baldur's Gate or something like that. Maybe 2.
Sounds like fun. Yeah, I'd love to get into.
Anybody will watch?
Huh?
If anybody wants to watch or play that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's always fun too. But for this evening, I'm going to sign off and say thank you all for joining us. Nice to meet you, Payman. We will stay in touch
Indeed.
and look forward to working with you in the future and hope everyone has a really good evening. And as always, happy gaming.
See you later, folks.
See you later.